Hello, my name is Emily Sfera, and I'm in my last year of acupuncture school, and I'm here to interview Deb Davies. So Deb is a licensed acupuncturist. She runs a clinic called Push San Diego, and we're just going to talk about several questions sort of about the journey post-school and what that looks like for Deb and some advice and thoughts that she has. So Deb, thank you for joining.
Sure. So happy to be here and support all the future acupuncturists of the world.
Okay, so let's jump in. My first question is, what was the first year out of acupuncture school like for you? What did you do? What was your sort of path?
Well, so I had been practicing as a massage therapist for many years, doing massage and working with pregnancy then. And then I was hired by PCOM, and it was something that I kind of pushed while I was in school. And it was about 6 months prior to my graduation where I helped them determine like a lack of department or whatever. So I wound up starting the alumni department at PCOM San Diego. So it started out as a 20-hour-a-week job, and I was doing my practice and working on transitioning the massage business to an acupuncture business. But the demand at PCOM became so immense, I quickly became a full-time employee, and I actually let my clinic go for a year or so while I was a full-time employee, and then I realized I shouldn't have done that. So years later, I left PCOM and then went back to private practice. But I learned a lot, and I loved the experience I received as the alumni director. Plus, I got to meet a lot of wonderful people. So I feel like my path was a little bit different. But one thing I always do recommend for new people is like, it's okay to have two things. If you were a waitress before and you're starting your practice, like it's okay to waitress and do practice. Or if you did nails or hair or massage or whatever it is, it's great. Even if you're an Uber driver, you have another revenue, another way to make money, another outlet to see patients. So there's a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I imagine building that clientele post school, like that's going to be a slow build, right? So having that other form of income is probably important and helpful to balance things out.
I really think so, because when I went to school, it was just expected that you were going to work for yourself. Nowadays, there are so many more options in terms of, how to do it, but there was no jobs when I went to school. So now there are some jobs, but I think people have to realize that if you're planning to get a job, it's also going to be not as much money as you can make, as your own boss. But then it's less work, but it's less money. So there's a lot of things to consider, really.
Yeah, definitely. So you ended up specializing in women's health. And so I'm just kind of curious, did you always know that you wanted to specialize in a certain population, or like what drew you to specialize in this particular population?
I feel like I have always been drawn to women's health. When I was doing massage, I did a lot of pregnancy massage, and that was when I had actually started doulaing, was one of my massage clients. And so I just kind of was really interested in it, and then I became pregnant, and unfortunately I lost my first baby, and I had a stillborn baby at full term. And so that really was such a huge impact on my life, losing the baby. And then I received so much care from Chinese medicine. I was getting treated at PCOM Clinic. Gretchen Seitz and Aaron Cook were my acupuncturists. It was really amazing to have such a support team. But that was actually what inspired me to go to school. I was going to have another baby, but that I was so impressed with the amount of resources and help I got, and how much better I felt after having a stillbirth, and then the support I had during the second pregnancy and everything. So really, for me, the worst thing that ever happened to me has turned into the best thing, and it's my specialty. So I did not start out specializing, but I had this strong passion for women's health. And after my baby died, I was like, I am specializing in women's health, and I'm going to yell it to the world, like on social media, women's health, and especially pregnancy, because I found that a lot of people don't want to treat women when they're pregnant as acupuncturists, or they don't know how to, or they're terrified to. Yeah, so the specialization really came from my loss. And I think that my career exploded when I announced to the world, I specialize in birth. I specialize in pregnancy and birth. And a lot of people think it's fertility. And, I thought there's so many people that specialize in fertility. Why am I even going to try to compete in the realm? There's so many amazing clinics already out there. So I just really always wanted to be pregnancy, birth. And it's now expanded quite a bit where I do treat a lot of fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and now menopause too. So it's kind of the whole span of life from menarche to menopause. I got you. Yes.
So in that vein, how did Push San Diego come to be?
Well, Push San Diego came to be because I had practiced solo for so many years, and I wanted to be more than just about me, like to be an entity. I had several different clinic locations in my life, and it was just finding my home, finding the rhythm, finding the right balance of place. So we got Push San Diego location in April of 2018, and so that has been home for us for 2 years now. And it's been lovely because we have an integrative center where there's a naturopathic doctor, a chiropractor, a PhD. We have a pelvic floor PT, massage therapy, energy healing, and acupuncture. Myself is acupuncture. And it's just nice to provide so many options. I always say, like, my mission at Push San Diego and with myself is to educate and empower expecting couples to have safe and healthy pregnancies, births, and recoveries by offering natural options in healthcare. And while I do specialize in the pregnancy birth stuff, I do see women of all ages. I see teenagers for stress and acne, and I see menopause and dryness and gestational diabetes. So there's quite a range, but the majority of my patients are women's health related. The majority of my patients are women. I do see men mostly related to the fertility, and then I wind up treating their shoulder pain or back pain too. But it's actually nice. I felt like in the beginning of my career, when I was taking anything and everything and I was taking insurance, it's like you see a patient with back pain, then you see a depression patient, then you see a diabetes patient, then you see a pregnant patient, then you see a cancer patient. And I was like, I can't wrap my head around all the cancer drugs and all of this. And, we have to learn a lot to become acupuncturists. So for me, specializing was the best thing I could have done, because it's now I'm really focused into what I study. Like, I'm a vagina expert and I'm proud of it, and I know my stuff, and I'll tell people if I don't know the answer, and I do a lot of research as well. But I love that Push has come to be such a resource for women's health, and me personally really want to support people more and more around the fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum times in their life.
That's beautiful. So when you came to building the integrative team at the clinic, is that something that you recruited people for? Did people come to you? Like, how did that piece come together?
It was really an evolutionary process. One of the gals is a naturopathic doctor, and she and I had practiced a mile away from each other, both women's health specialists, and she had reached out to me and wanted to have lunch with me one day, and we wound up having lunch once a month for a year or so before we started the clinic. And it was great because my pelvic floor PT was originally a fertility patient with me. And 3 months later, she's now the pelvic floor PT in my clinic. The massage therapist is one of my dearest, closest friends, and she interned with me for 5 years and has worked with me. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful situation.
Yeah,
it kind of just evolved perfectly. And it was a lot about timing and this and that, but it's very cool.
And then one more follow-up question on that piece, because you mentioned it. So insurance is kind of a hot topic, especially when you're graduating. It's like, do you, don't you, so it sounds like you've done both sides of the equation at this point. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience with both and where you've kind of landed with it?
When I started out, I took insurance, and I took insurance, work comp, everything I could, I took. And so it was nice because it was a way to bring me patients, but it was very frustrating at the amount of time and money I had to pay my administrator and my biller to follow up to get the money. And I would be paid anywhere from 40, to 50 a patient to $150 a patient. And it became really frustrating over the years because of several reasons. One was, I felt like I was at least worth, X number of dollars, at least $80 an hour. And so some of them, so it became a nightmare for me with insurance, honestly. And also the things that I do in my clinic, like fertility, like somebody comes in and has a pregnancy complication. And oftentimes those things are like placenta previa, it's a breech baby, it's gestational diabetes, it's edema, whatever. With insurance, health insurance coverage for acupuncture is good for pain. And that's what they will cover. They will cover pain and only certain kinds of pain, and then nausea, vomiting. So you get people that want to come see you as a fertility patient, and they say, oh, I have insurance. I want to use my insurance. I'm like, well, if you're coming for fertility, that's not a covered. So it's like a thing. And so for years I was like, oh, just tell me about your pain. And so we would do the pain stuff, and then it just became ridiculous because then we're talking about fertility. And so I made a conscious decision 5 years ago, no more insurance. I'm done. And I feel like I'm an expert in my field. I'm a specialist. You pay for the expert, you pay for the specialist. So why not do that,
Yeah. So back to kind of the idea of the clinic and running the clinic, what are the most challenging elements of running your own clinic?
I think the most challenging aspects of running a clinic is the team, the teamwork, and the realization that it takes a lot. Running a clinic is a full-time job. So being an acupuncturist is a full-time job. Running a clinic is a full-time job. So if you don't have the money to pay somebody to do that, you're doing two jobs. And I don't think that I fully realize or grasp the amount of work and things coming together, like, having 9 different people renting from the office, and all their needs and their wants, and, trying to make sure everyone's happy. And then the reality of the financials, it costs a lot of money to do business. I have to pay more for insurance. I have to pay for a needle pickup. I have to pay for, just toilet paper, things like paper towels, cleaning service, things that people don't honestly realize is part of it. And then when you have a clinic like ours is 6 rooms, honestly, one of my challenges was just what's over time, like who, nobody wanted to do anything. It was all on me to run it. And so the way we have set it up is that it's Push San Diego, but then other doctors rent space and run their business out of Push San Diego. And so we do try to cross refer, but 2 years in, I've done all the referring, 90% of it. So I see my patients all over my clinic, but it hasn't necessarily come back to me. So that's a frustration as well, honestly.
So you've been in the game for a while, so to speak, and you've really had some great success and have quite a reputation, especially in the world of women's health in San Diego. So what do you feel has been really crucial to that success for you, or just your success as a practitioner?
I think that one of my things that helped me the most was networking. And I started networking when I was a PCOM student, and I hosted a thing called the Integrative Medical Discussion Group. And that was a meeting we had once a month, and we invited Eastern and Western practitioners and students of medicine, and we would talk about like integrative oncology or integrative women's health or integrative pediatrics or, you know, whatever. We did a sexuality one, and we brought together a panel of an acupuncturist, a medical doctor, you know, a nurse, and a chiropractor or a PhD, and it was really great. So one of the things I started early on was networking with the medical community. So that would be something that I really feel is a good tip for anybody that's a student or that's interested in building their business, is really networking. So that handshaking, showing up to the networking events, taking the time to spend 30 more minutes before or after the event to just say hello, get to know people. So I think that was honestly one of the best things that ever happened to my career, and ability to network with so many people. And those people are, you know, my Facebook friends, my Insta friends, they're on my email list. And now it's 10, 20 years later, like time's flying. So I think networking and continuing to connect with your network is probably one of my big things.
We talk about this quite a bit in school, this kind of concept of networking and being able to market yourself, or just to meet people in the world of acupuncture and outside of acupuncture. And so I think a lot of students are intimidated by that, especially when they're still a student and not, you know, they don't have the doctorate or the degree yet. So what might be your advice, or just how did you handle, you know, those conversations pre and post networking events? I don't know, I'm just curious to hear more. Like, is that just naturally like you're confident when you speak in public or when you're meeting folks, or were there any like tips or tricks that you use to kind of make the conversation flow?
One of my thoughts as a student, and you can use this to your advantage being a student, is you find who you want to study with, who you want to be like, who you want to work with, whatever that is, and you research, and you can do the Google search and Yelp and see the reviews, and you decide, you know what, I really want to get to know Dr. X or Dr. Y or this acupuncturist. I mean, even you, to reach out with me to get to know me. You just do it. And you ask to do an informational interview, kind of like what you're doing of me. And most people are very happy to give their time to talk about themselves. And it also is beneficial for you, because now you and I have a connection, and you've got to learn my story and a little bit about me. And we're kind of supporting each other here. And then later on, in 6 months or a year from now, or a year and a half, when you're done school and you say, hey, Deb, do you have anything available at your clinic? I'm like, oh yeah, Emily was so helpful. I love her. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, you know, that's something that's really important there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of takes us into my last question. You talked about networking and kind of like jumping into that even while you're still in school.
Yes.
What other advice or tips or actionable items might you have for someone who's about to graduate or just graduated and like, okay, what do I do? Where do I start?
Okay, well, I think the networking thing is great, and that can be doing those informational interviews and reaching out to people. And so there's so much that can just be like, and so on and so on and so on. But I think that most people will find jobs, positions, whatever, not by answering an ad, like by doing the work. And it's like, if you go out and meet the people, and I think that informational interview is really powerful. And can I have 15 minutes of your time? Sure, it's not a problem. I'm happy to help other people. So most people, so I think networking is great. That can lead into internships or other potential opportunities for you. And then I mentioned earlier, having 2 things to do.
Yeah.
There's no shame in being an Uber driver or a waitress or whatever it is that you're doing at your current job or prior to PCOM, because one, you're having exposure to more people, and they're like, hey, what's up? And, you know, you pick them up from the airport and they're like, man, my back's killing me. And like, hey, you might get a patient there tomorrow now, or, you know, you never know. So I think having 2 things, not just thinking 100%, unless you take out a big loan or you have the resources to do it. So yeah, so I would say having 2 things, and that's especially if you're wanting to build your own business. Yeah. And I really believe in specialization. I think that I would absolutely encourage everyone to specialize, because at this point in my life and everything, when I'm sick, I want to see the specialist, and I'm willing to pay the specialist money to see them. And so I love being that specialist, honestly. And it's wonderful for me because, I study vaginas, and I know that really well. And that's just, I'm really excited to help women feel empowered and have options. So I just say specialize, 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 and never stop learning. Like, we of course need our CEUs, but I can't believe the number of hours I spend studying outside of CEUs. And it seems like the older I get, or the longer I'm in practice, the more time I study, and the more I feel like I don't know. Like, the more you know, the more you don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm really blown away by the depth of knowledge of so many of my mentors and masters ahead of us. And I'm never going to stop learning. So I would say, all those things. Specialize and never stop learning.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Deb. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.